Okay, so you heard there's a GST holiday coming up. No federal tax for 2 months on a whole bunch of stuff, from ice cream to dollhouses to Christmas trees. And you're wondering, okay, but how much money am I actually gonna save? Because one guy tells you this.
We're going to remove the GST, HST from groceries. 100% of groceries, all groceries.
And the other guy tells you this.
Today, what we have is a 2-month temporary tax trick.
And you just love for someone to do the math for you. Well, I did. And I found there's something very important that the government isn't mentioning about this tax break that undercuts how much you may actually get back at the cash register. Let me explain. So to understand where the government's promise might fall short of expectations, you first have to understand how the promise even works.
For 2 months, Canadians are going to get a real break on everything they do.
Starting December 14th and running until February 15th, so that's 2 full months, the federal government is removing the GST on a whole basket of goodies. So that's 5% off prepared foods that you might buy in a grocery store, like salads and sandwiches, snacks like chips, candy, chocolate, fresh baked goods, beer, wine, and pre-mixed drinks under 7% alcohol, all restaurant meals, kids' clothes, shoes, hats, gloves, toys like dolls, Lego, stuffed animals, board games, video games, books, newspapers, Christmas trees, car seats, diapers.
These are things that recognize that people are squeezed, and we're there to help.
I think this list that they've drawn up is designed to appeal to middle-class people. They're trying to throw them a bone and say, hey, save a little bit of money this holiday season.
But it's too big a list to describe exhaustively because every category also has kind of weird exceptions. Like, you wouldn't think kids' clothing would include baby bibs, but it does. For shoes, there's a hard limit on how big they're allowed to be to qualify. You'd think books is a pretty simple category, but it's not. And the food section, well, let's just say it gets very specific. Even video games only count if you're buying the physical media, not if you're buying the game online. So, like I said, it's a big list, but you can think of it in 2 broad categories. Food, virtually all food, and a bunch of kids stuff. Clothes, toys, diapers, car seats. And then Christmas trees, just because.
And it comes just in time for the holidays, when people are going to want to be entertaining.
And wait, it gets better, because while the GST applies across the country, so that's a 5% federal tax that will disappear for 2 months, there's a bonus reduction in 5 provinces.
All tax-free, removing the GST and the HST.
Yes, in Ontario and all of Atlantic Canada, where the GST is already combined with the provincial sales tax, you get that HST removed. So in Ontario's case, that's 13% when you combine the two, and in Atlantic Canada, the HST is even higher at 15%.
The government estimates that people in provinces with the HST will have like a doubled savings, right? So there's quite a disparity between what Canadians in those HST provinces will be saving in the 2-month period between December and February and what people in the other provinces will be saving.
Now, this is where we kind of want to be really clear-eyed about what the government is promising here, because politically, these 5 provinces matter. You can't win an election if you don't win Ontario. And the Liberals are seeing support slip away in Atlantic Canada. And I'm not sure it's super obvious that this bonus isn't quite as big as advertised. And I'll show you why. So my wife and I live in Ontario, and she bought shoes for the kids recently. Here's the receipt. Note the cost, $32.96 plus $6.08 in shipping. If I was already paying 13% in HST, so $32.96 plus $6.08 equals $39.04 times 13%, I should be paying $5.08 in tax. But I didn't pay that. I only paid $1.95. Why is that? Because, and I'll show you the math, so $1.95 divided by $39.04 times 100. That shows me that I paid almost exactly 5% in tax. So I paid the GST, but not the full HST, because In Ontario, you already don't pay any provincial tax on kids' shoes or diapers. I bought these last night, and here's the receipt. $15.99, and the HST was 80 cents. That's 5% tax, not 13%. And then I bought this bean salad, and it says right here on the receipt that I paid 5% tax. That's all I paid. In Ontario, it was already the case that things like books, kids' clothing and footwear, car seats, booster seats, diapers, newspapers, they were all already exempt from the provincial portion of the HST. And so far as I can tell, this is also true to varying degrees in different parts of Atlantic Canada as well. In New Brunswick, books, for example, are already exempt from the provincial part of the HST. The federal GST is already the only tax you pay. In PEI, it's been true for years that you don't pay the provincial part of the HST on children's clothing, footwear, and books. And we can do a side-by-side comparison of the PEI exemptions from 10 plus years ago with the brand new GST holiday announcement. Notice any similarities? The language is tailor-written, basically copied to mirror what has already been in place to a T. So the 13 to 15% savings in some provinces that the government is advertising isn't quite that high. But to be fair, the proposed GST holiday does expand tax exemptions in every province, even the ones I've listed. For example, I don't know of a single province that has a tax exemption on Nintendo Switches, but there will be one, at least on the GST portion, come next month. So let's figure out how much money you are likely to save once this kicks in. So let's start with food, because this is where I think most of us feel the biggest daily pinch. According to One Research Lab's annual food report, a typical family of 4 is likely to spend just over $16,000 a year on groceries.
I will say that feels a little high to me. I spend a few $1,000s less than that, but my kids are young and maybe they don't eat as much. So let's work with this figure, $16,000 a year. According to Statistics Canada, of that amount, about a quarter is spent on foods that are taxable to begin with.
Because, and I think we all know this already, basic groceries like eggs, milk, fruits, vegetables, meat, there's already zero tax on that stuff.
So let's set that chunk of food aside. If we figure the average family spends 25% of $16,000, which is, let's say, about $4,000 a year, on the kinds of things that you do pay tax on, so we're talking pop, junk food, ice cream, granola bars, the prepared, ready-to-eat food, getting a 5% discount on that works out to around $200 annually. More than that, sometimes, if you live in a province with HST. But remember that this tax holiday only runs for 2 months. So on groceries, you're saving 1/6 that amount, which works out to $33.
That's it. That's the grocery savings. But let's add restaurants. If you spend $100 on a meal once a week, that's $5 of savings a week for 8 weeks. That's $40 more in savings. Do you spend $20 a week on alcohol? Let's add another $1 a week off, $8 total. Christmas gifts. And let's go all out. We're gonna buy one kid a $100 Lego set for another $5 off, and we're gonna spend $500 on a PS5, which adds another $25 of savings. And then, what the hell? We're gonna spend $100 buying a new fake Christmas tree, just because we can. That's another $5 in savings. So what are we up to now? $116 in savings, and there's still more that we could add. Now, I need to really stress this point. All anyone can do here is estimate, because maybe you don't buy any of those things, so you save less. Or maybe you live in Nova Scotia, where you save 15%, not 5%, so you will save triple our estimate. Or maybe you've got a newborn. You go through 10 diapers a day, and you're planning on stocking up. So You're going to buy $1,000 worth of diapers in one go. You live in PEI, so you're getting 15% off, and that saves you $150 without even blinking an eye. Everyone's mileage will vary. Fair? But let's make one last point before we wrap this up. We've already gone through a lot, so I don't want to tack on too much here at the end, but there are a few things that we do have to mention because they're a part of the story.
This is really about saying to Canadians, things have been hard.
One criticism of this plan from the Bloc Québécois is that this tax relief feels transparent.
The Liberals have shown that when they need billions of dollars in order to literally buy votes, they find it.
A lot of critics are saying the government is just trying to buy your vote right now. They're trying to get you back on side with the Liberal Party. They're trying to get you back in the fold.
A perhaps bigger picture question, though, is whether injecting all of this stimulus money into the economy just drives inflation higher, because we know more spending equals more economic activity equals higher prices. And on that point, we don't really know how most retailers are going to react.
Yes, prices go down effectively 5% on December 14th, but maybe the grocery store jacks them up 1 or 2% and captures part of that reduction in GST in corporate profits.
Mr. Harper in 2007, 2008 actually reduced the GST by 1%. 2 consecutive years. Inflation went up, not down. Food inflation went up, not down.
And ultimately, no matter who pockets most of the savings, there is an opportunity cost when you don't charge tax. The federal government's own estimate is that they'll be foregoing $1.6 billion in tax revenue by giving Canadians this tax break. That's either a good thing if you think we already get taxed too much, or it's a bad thing if you ask yourself what the government could have spent that money on, as it expects to run a deficit of $40 billion this fiscal year.